Assassin's Creed Unity was considered one of the worst video game launches, not just for Ubisoft, but for the industry as a whole. An installment from one of the biggest franchises in video games had been a complete disaster. It was something that was clearly not anticipated, and the backlash that came as a result of Assassin's Creed Unity's launch has impacted the entire model of the Assassin's Creed games. Fans of the series were disturbed by how damaged Unity was upon its launch back in 2014. However, Unity is an example of a game that saw a strong revival in the years following its damaged release. Unlike many games out there, Unity managed to cultivate a strong fanbase around its name despite any gripes players had with its initial state. Unity has become considered one of the best Assassin's Creed games in years. In fact, there have been many that have gone back to it, calling it the last true and good Assassin's Creed. Whether that's true is not the debate here. However, it cannot be denied that Unity has surged in recent years into becoming a popular, beloved title in the Ubisoft franchise. This is the story of Assassin's Creed Unity, a game that has interestingly survived the test of time. Development for Assassin's Creed Unity began shortly after the completion of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood back in 2010. On March 19, 2014, early screenshots of the game and the title were leaked. The leak revealed that Unity would take place in Paris during the French Revolution and would include a new assassin to play. It's important to understand the console market during the release of Unity because it certainly had an impact on the release window. 2014 was set to be the launch of the new Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Typically during the window of brand new console releases, video game publishers push for a game to be released at the same time as new consoles do. Players getting the new consoles will want new next-gen games to enjoy on their, new next-gen consoles. Of course, Unity would certainly want to take advantage of this release, and in fact, it would be the first Assassin's Creed game to be solely released on next-gen consoles. The trailers released for Unity were full of hype and excitement, featuring Lord's cover of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. It portrayed a game that would be full of intense and varied combat, powerful and cool assassin skills, and even the chance to play as a team in co-op. It would be the first Assassin's Creed to introduce a more fleshed out multiplayer system. Now, Assassin's Creed is not unfamiliar to multiplayer modes, but Unity was the first to feature such a deep and rich co-op experience. People were genuinely excited for the release. The next-gen consoles were a powerful advantage to Unity's development because of the fact that they could boost the game's visuals and add even more NPCs to make the world look so vibrant. One of the things that has held up for Unity has been its powerful graphics and its vibrant and detailed world. In fact, Unity has some amazing detailed interiors and buildings that make it unique. Much of the world of Unity felt alive and buzzing with the action of the French Revolution. It is clear that in terms of visuals alone, Unity withstood the test of time. It is considered still one of the most graphically well-done entries in the entire franchise. However, with the new title, Ubisoft had to rework practically their entire engine. At the time, creative director Jean Getson stated back in 2018 that the hyper-focus by the devs on the tech part prevented them from focusing on the gameplay and co-op. He stated that graphically the game is great, but the issues with the polishing of the game made it near impossible to work out most of the bugs and glitches that players faced during the launch. Guillemot also reiterated the problems with rebuilding the engine and its impact on the game's overall development cycle. Originally, Unity was set to release on October 28, 2014. However, Ubisoft later announced that it would be delayed until November 11, 2014 in North America. For the most part, Unity's reception was not hammered for the game itself. Rather, it was mostly negatively reviewed due to its technical issues and bugs. As a game itself, it wasn't bad. However, with the infamous bugs and glitches that removed faces, broke the game, and created issues in playing, there was a lot to critique as well. There were online connectivity problems, which was highly damaging to Unity as a game, what with its advertised co-op mode. At the time, CEO of Ubisoft Montreal, Yanis Malat, apologized for the poor quality that Unity launched in and stated that such issues were preventing players from, quote, experiencing the game at its fullest potential. In order to save face, Ubisoft halted the sale of the Season Pass and the Gold Edition and provided the first DLC, Dead Kings, for free. To compensate those that purchased the Season Pass, Ubisoft allowed for them to select a free Ubisoft game from a list. They also announced that they would continue continue to add more content to Unity and would give away Assassin's Creed Chronicles China. However, in order to claim these compensations, Ubisoft requested users to forfeit their right to sue the company. In February 2016, Ubisoft announced that it would not announce any additional Assassin's Creed games for the year and that they would try to improve Unity and the franchise's mechanics into the future. However, at the time, Assassin's Creed Syndicate was already in development and launched with a, quote, slower than expected reception financially. Besides the obvious bugs and glitches that accompanied Unity, there was a lot of criticism for the story and the character. Now, I should preface this by saying that I'm an author, so I will be analyzing the story from an author's perspective. Firstly, character development is important in any story. No matter what, if your character is boring, uninspired, or bland, then the story immediately has a problem. Arno Dorian, the main character of Assassin's Creed Unity, did develop quite a lot over the course of the story. His motivations were clear and his personality was as well. Just letting you all know from this point forth, there will be spoilers for the story. In any case, Arno's story was set up well. His father was an assassin who was killed, and Arno was raised by Templar Grand Master Francois de la Serre. Fast forward a few years, de la Serre is murdered, and Arno is falsely accused of the crime and imprisoned in the Bastille. As a history fan, I've done plenty of research regarding the French Revolution, seeing as it's one of my favorite time periods. The Bastille was an important symbol in the French Revolution and was burned down prior to the commencement of the Reign of Terror. It was considered a political symbol in real life. This was called the storming of the Bastille in French history. Where this intersects with the story is that while Arno is imprisoned, he meets an assassin named Pierre Belec, who eventually invites Arno to join the Brotherhood. The two escape during the previously mentioned storming of the Bastille. Now, clearly we have a motive that's been set up by the writers. Arno will obviously want revenge against whoever killed de la Serre, considering that he was essentially Arno's adoptive father. Here's the part of the story that was frequently critiqued though. The romance. Romance can be a strong plot point in any story. Many times, writers will use a love interest to propel something in the story forward. While I myself am not a frequent romance writer, seeing as I write sci-fi and fantasy, there are definitely times when inserting romance into the story makes sense or can actually aid in the plot of the story. However, the romance in Unity, it just wasn't really that good. You see, it makes sense for Arno to like Elise de la Serre. They grew up around each other, so I suppose you could consider it a case of childhood best friends that later fell in love. However, Elise blames Arno for not doing much to help her father avoid being murdered. The reason being is that Arno had to deliver a letter to warn Francois de la Serre regarding the murder plot, but failed to do so in a timely manner. But the chemistry between them was practically non-existent for a grand majority of the game. Only close to the end did the writers give the two characters some semblance of a proper love story, and even then, upon Elise's death, it was hard to really feel too much for Arno regarding this issue. Of course, it's sad that he lost the woman he loved, but had the romance been set up better, it would have made much more of an impact. Elise as a character was not bad at all, and I actually liked the way she was written. However, I felt that the romance was not really given much weight until the end. That itself was a fairly noticeable mistake. Moving on from this, the story overall wasn't exactly bad, but it wasn't fantastic. There have been better stories in the franchise. With that being said, I enjoyed the story. It wasn't all too exciting and it was fairly predictable, but it was still a decent one. There were moments of excitement and action. The revenge plot is overdone, but it wasn't a bad revenge story nonetheless. As a video game, it was good. Many complained that Arno's character was not well written. Others argued his motivations were not clear. What I saw from Arno's character was that he had too many stories jam-packed into a single video game and that it wasn't enough to flesh him out and focus on fleshing those stories out. I felt personally Arno was modeled after Ezio near the beginning, but the writers couldn't keep that personality up and began to try and dramatically change Arno's personality, but it felt rushed, sudden, and abrupt. The only thing that mattered was getting justice for Francois de la Serre, but this plotline was muddled amidst so many other story elements. In my eyes, that made Arno's character a weak-written one. Other characters in the franchise had much more compelling stories that were engaging and interesting. Coupled with the setting of the French Revolution, Arno's character could have had so much more done to develop him. It would have been interesting to see him either participate in the revolution or have some motivation outside of a romance alone. Sometimes I just felt confused regarding if he actually cared about de la Serre or if he just wanted Elise's forgiveness. The missions themselves were good. I felt that the pacing of the story was right and it made sense. There was enough variation and assassination missions that the game felt like it understood what model it was going after. Some of the missions were genuinely unique, like the Rift missions where you travel through time. It honestly got me wondering if an Assassin's Creed game set in a period like World War II would be fun. I think I'd play it if that was a thing, to be honest. Missions felt like they were designed well. There were several things to do. It was especially cool to see how you could engage in a mission in different ways depending on what steps you chose to take to infiltrate the target area. I can't talk about Unity without talking about things like the movement. Obviously the parkour and stealth were stellar. similar. Parkour animations and smoothness were some of the best in the franchise. I mean, yeah, of course the physics of the parkour wasn't really like good, but or realistic, but it was fun and it looks great. So I guess that kind of is the important part about it. The stealth was beyond superb. I mean, to this day you'll still find many YouTube channels that highlight stealth gameplay and assassinations in Unity. There was customization that was great, that provided a lot of room to personalize Arno's style. I felt like it was an addition to the game that made it feel a bit more immersive. Ultimately, Unity was great, and that was one of the things that bothered me about a later game like Origins. It was building off of the backbone of a game with great parkour, mechanics, level design, and more. Origins simply decided to throw a lot of that away for the sake of reworking the entire engine. You see, this is the point that I'm leading up to. Unity was genuinely a great game. Not without flaws, but if you looked at the details, the game was, in general, good. However, its initial failure hit Ubisoft, and so execs decided that the entire game needed to have a vision redirect, so to speak. As such, they went back to the drawing board and completely flipped the game with Origins. Origins is great. However, Ubisoft didn't realize that the problem with Unity wasn't Unity. It was a lack of proper time working on Unity that made it a mess. Unity's story was weaker than others, sure, but gameplay-wise, it wasn't. Aside from the combat, Unity's parkour and stealth were great. Its graphics were as well. Origins didn't carry over many of the things that made Unity great because Ubisoft just assumed everyone hated Unity because they just did. Can we say the new games are a failure? Of course not. That would be grossly inaccurate. If anything, the new games did revive the franchise. Monetarily, Ubisoft already grossed over like $1 billion off of Valhalla alone. Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla collectively have dominated for the series, and people are still playing them years after their release, and they are among my favorite. So I suppose the question I would ask is this: was the old formula getting bland? Was this redirection good for the franchise? Was Unity's reception accurate to the idea that the game was getting boring? Perhaps all of these things are true. However, we cannot deny that Unity is growing in popularity, and it has been many years since its release. We cannot deny that people are beginning to see what a great game Unity was. Whether that was propelled by the new game releases or just revisiting for the sake of nostalgia, Unity was not a miserable failure by the definition that I usually look at games from. So what's the moral of the story? I'd say all it takes for a game to succeed is for its devs to actually put effort and fix it. So many games I've looked at have suffered the same fate because the devs were rushed into producing a product that was unfinished as a result of pressure by higher-ups who don't seem to quite understand how complicated development on games can be. But of course, some blame has to be laid onto devs. Sometimes developer decisions can be to blame as well. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is this: developers need to make the right decision, and execs need to have more realistic expectations. Too many games bite off more than they can chew. At the end of the day, Assassin's Creed Unity has successfully stood the test of time, and it has thrived on years after its rocky release. Thank you all for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another upload. Also, remember to like and comment below. These are just easy ways to help me out and support the channel. Check out the links in the description to see my book and my website. See you all in the next video. Symbiosis out.